Hello, and welcome to Of the People. I am Robert Chernin. Thank you so much for joining us again. The war that no one wants to talk about. And no, I'm not talking about the war between Ukraine and Russia. There's be enough to talk about that later in the show. I'm talking about the war within the Republican Party. We've seen on the debate stage last week the Republican presidential candidates. And while I think people had some good points, some good things to say, and people had some things that I think were a little not serious that they had to say, I think the point that most people are missing is there's really a battle within the Republican Party. Let's take Donald Trump out of this equation, right? But if you look at the results of the polling, you have Donald Trump at 50%, you have Ron DeSantis at 12%, and Vivek Ramaswamy, clearly the most entertaining debater of the evening, at 9%. That's 71% of the Republican base. Again, this is not about Trump. This is about the policies. Because what no one's really talking about is what are the policies that Donald Trump had when he was president? What are the policies that are being put forward by the various candidates? And when you aggregate the numbers, Trump, DeSantis, as well as Ramaswamy, Vivek, as he's known to his friends, all have Trumpian policies. And what were those policies, right? Strong on immigration, build the wall, right? Legal immigration, right? And then there's the 4 E's, education, whether it's school choice, getting the woke mob out of the schools, parental rights in school. It's energy. We were energy independent. We're now energy dependent again. And now we're going to be buying all these batteries for electric vehicles from China, right? You're talking about it's the economy, stupid, right? It's another E, right? You're talking about all of these things. You're talking about gun rights. You're talking about freedom of religion. Those things, the Republican Party has become, in my opinion, a populist party. It's a blue-collar, populist, flyover country party. The Reagan Democrats, if you will, the Blue Dog Democrats and the moderate Republicans have all moved right except for the old guard. So what I think you saw on that stage, and I think Vice President Pence, I think he handled himself well. I think he certainly has the most experience. I am ABB. I'm anybody but Biden. Right? I'm probably ABN because it's anybody but Newsom, which is what's going to happen, in my opinion. But you saw the old guard, the RINOs, as they're called, right? Republicans in name only, versus the new populist part of the party. And that's what nobody is really talking about. So when you look through the candidates in all of this, and we can go through all this, part of the problem is that the old guard in the party refuses to, I think, embrace some of the ideas and some of the populist aspects because they are the old guard and they don't want to give up their power within the party either. And again, this has nothing to do with Trump. But when you're talking about RINOs, it really doesn't stand for Republicans in name only. It stands for really interested in no outsiders, right? That's really what we're talking about. So when you look at the candidates again, let's try to get beyond who they are and what and their personal idiosyncrasies. All the policies, 71% of the party is on Trump's side of the policy ledger. There's going to be some differences, that's fine. But as far as those that are really interested in no outsiders, I think that they are a minority within the Republican Party at this point, and so it should be. Folks, stay tuned. We are going to have an insider, Jay the Republican, who's going to join us. He was at the debates. He's going to give us his take on everything, and I'm sure it will be a free-for-all discussion. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Our guest is in the backstage right now.
Let's bring in Jay the Republican to this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are of the people, and today is Throw Up Thursday. And one of the Republican thought leaders has joined us, Jay the Republican. Hello, Jay.
Hello, Robert. Hi, Ericka. It's a pleasure to be on this show.
Absolutely. And you missed the lead in. And we were just talking about you. Actually, that's not true. We were talking. So we decided to also have a darker perspective here.
All right.
But what we wanted to know, since you are a Republican thought leader, and I'm not sure that bodes well for the Republican Party, but, you know, since you're a Republican thought leader, what are the thoughts for today that we need to chew on?
I think Throw Up Thursday is all about things that happened in the past week that have just made me sick. And so having attended the convention in Wisconsin earlier this week, I wanted to reflect a little bit on what made me a little bit ill while I was there. Not to mention I got a little bit ill on the fly home, but at the convention itself. I was extremely fortunate that I had not a front row seat, but I was in the fourth row, and I was sitting with some congressional members of Congress that
no names
had some very interesting reactions. So if you go back to watch the video, every time they cut to Brett Baer, you see my photo there. I'm in the background. Oh. But what I really want to talk about was someone named V Fake. I mean, we need to really look at, he's really trying to get us to understand how to pronounce his name. Everybody says Vivek, a lot of different names. But he finally came out and really tried to help us. So what he said is, it's V, and it rhymes with cake. Well, I think it also rhymes with fake. So to remember how to pronounce his name properly, pronounce it V-fake. It's very close to how he wants to pronounce V-fake, but it's V-fake. Here's a guy who comes and interrupts what is a very, very important debate. Here we have 8 people on the debate stage, and he's trying to dominate the time. Here's someone with no experience, someone who doesn't vote, someone who's has not been involved in public politics ever. But now he comes out of nowhere because he has money. And he comes out with an opening line of, I'm the only one up here that hasn't been bought and paid for. Well, the fact is, you paid for your microphone. You came with your own money, and however you raised it, you are now using it to make a name for yourself. Apparently, your 1.5, 2 years of being a stand-up comic didn't really work for you. So now you're trying to put us another stage show. It appeared to me that while all the other candidates were running for president, you're running for a primetime spot on Saturday Night Live. This is not comedy. This is important. And what you've done is you've taken up time on the national stage away from people who have experience. So one of the things I really wanted to say is he's on here. His answers about Ukraine, his answers about not supporting our allies in Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, about giving up on Taiwan, basically saying, well, China, take it back. We don't care. This is a man who is dangerous. So we need to make sure that he is taken off the debate. The highlight of the debate for me was when Nikki Haley slapped him down. Here was someone who knows what it's like to be a mother and spanked a kid that needed to be spanked at the time. I wish at that particular point they would have stopped the debate. They would have said, okay, V-Fake.
Change his diapers?
No, V-Fake, go to your room.
Right.
You need to leave the stage now. Go to your room and no internet for a week. So here's a guy who, what's he going to do? He's going to become president. He's going to bring people in. What's he going to do for Secretary of State? Is he going to bring in somebody who last month was part of some Tide Pod, chewing demonstration? We don't need him in his ilk running this country. It's too dangerous. It's not a time. He's out there saying, well, I'm the next Donald Trump. We already have Donald Trump. We don't need 2.0 for someone who has no experience, somebody who doesn't vote, someone who's up there just name calling.
Did he say he doesn't vote? Is that something
he's voted twice in his life? He's 38 years old. He didn't even vote for Donald Trump. So you want to be just like Donald Trump? It would have been great to at least voted for him. So that's my rant of the week. We need to take these debates and they need to be serious because there were 7 other candidates there that had experience. They had knowledge on the issues. And here he was making jokes, waving his arms, trying to hit people with his hands that are next to him. You have to move the podiums further apart because he's trying to own the whole stage. He was a failure.
Did you see?
He ruined the debate, and there is no reason for anyone to be supporting him.
Did you see him putting his hand, like when somebody else was talking, he put his hand out so that he was in the other person's frame on television? It was like, are you doing that on purpose? Do you know that your hand is in the television frame right now?
Of course,
of the person speaking.
Wait a minute. You know he's a teacher, right?
You know he's a teacher? What?
Well, I mean, so it's Ramaswamy, right? Swami means teacher.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, come on, I had to go there after the V fake thing, right?
What he really wanted to do was he wanted to interrupt everyone. He wanted the most. As it ended up, Mike Pence had the most airtime, but he was trying to dominate the screen any way and every way he can, and he was doing a bad imitation. He is not Donald Trump, even though he wants to be. So that's why
I will say, though, it did feel like he was the most prepared and the most ready to dominate the stage. That was one of the things that I, think that is interesting is there were so many people on stage that night that were being polite and following the rules and being, whatever. But Vivek, V-Fake, for if we're going to call him that, he was like intentionally making it so that people would mention him, call him out, which gave him rebuttals and more opportunities to talk. So
wait a minute. Other than Senator Tim Scott and Governor Burgum, who paid attention to those buzzers? Vice President Pence, who I agree was, probably one of the most presidential on the stage at that evening, blew through those 3-4 times. They all, and Cordial, that was like a mud fight. Now, having said that, I agree, look, Vivek is a mile wide and an inch deep, right? Yeah. I think that's what Jay the Republican is what you're really saying.
Yeah. And
that's really what I'm saying.
Running for vice president.
He's not running for anything except for his own ego, his own gratification. He memorized slogans. He constantly threw out slogans, one-liners, interrupting people. There was no depth. There was no intent of knowledge. And just to give you an idea, later that day, the following day, I was fortunate to have breakfast with Senator Scott. We did lunch with Mike DeSantis. I was in a large group that had dinner with V-Fake. I intentionally sat in the back of the room because if all he wanted to do was yell, he was yelling at people. So my feeling is if I want to get yelled at, I'll go home to my wife where I deserve it. I don't need to listen to somebody who has no depth on any of the knowledge just yelling at me because, the Tide Pod generation, I'm not living there. And I don't want to.
Wait. What is the Tide Pod generation?
Ericka, do you want to explain to Robert the Tide Pod generation?
No. Wait a minute. So here's my question: if you're going to disparage your wife, she should be here to defend herself, don't you think?
Oh, I'm not disparaging my wife. Like I said, I deserve to be yelled at by her. I don't deserve to be yelled at by somebody who doesn't vote and someone who accuses everybody of being bought and paid for with no evidence, with no foreign policy experience. So my wife has the right to yell at me. V-Fake does not.
All right. Serious question. What would give me your 3 big takeaways from the Republican presidential debate?
Yeah. And who do you think did best? Who do you think
I think you're seeing some of the results right now. One of the things with any debate is it's a game of expectations. So you want to evaluate everyone in terms of what was the expectation and did they exceed those expectations. You're going to get a little bump up from V-Fake because there's people out there that said, oh, he's starting a revolution. Well, he's sloganeer. It's no different than the people that are protesting on the streets that have 1 or 2 lines on every subject and they're protesting. So you'll get a little bump from those who just, think there's a revolution coming. The real winner of the debate was Nikki Haley. And I want to make it very clear, I'm not endorsing anyone for president at this point, but Nikki Haley exceeded expectations. She was right on the issues. She was very strong. She was forceful. She exceeded expectations by a lot. Then you can take a look at Doug Burgum, who no one had any expectations for at all.
It was a low bar for him.
He did a great job.
He did.
He did a great job.
Right. But as Tim Scott said to me, when the buzzer rang, most of us stopped talking. He went through 3 buzzers without talking, without stopping. So he exceeded expectations because no one expected anything from him. And I think the same can be said with DeSantis. So Ron DeSantis, they had lowered the bar for him, that he's not a good debater. I think we saw that he's not a good debater, but he held his own. He was firm in his positions. He didn't take slaps from the other people. So I think he did very well.
Yeah, nobody attacked him like I was expecting. I was really expecting the other candidates to go after DeSantis, and they largely ignored him.
They did ignore him, and I think because DeSantis has proven that he's right on all the issues. So if they want to get into the depth of the issues with him, it's really difficult to attack him on anything but his style. The other very disappointing thing for me was when they asked Chris Christie the UFO question.
I was going to ask you about that.
So dumb.
Well, I think he had an opportunity to talk a lot about Biden and being an unidentified effing object in D.C. and some of the other Democrats and the liberals. I mean, that F could have stood for a tremendous amount of things besides flying. So I think there was some opportunity there to, have some levity and have some fun.
So question for you, and this is helpful. So Vice President Pence, he clearly had the most time. Did he help himself or did he hurt himself?
It was pretty tough to have him hurt himself. And if you look at the audience that was there, all the candidates pretty well had the same number of supporters in the audience. The supporters of a Mike Pence are not the ones that'll be yelling loud and booing.
Yeah, hooting and hollering.
They would comport themselves differently.
Right. A lot of them are like me, seasoned citizens. But I think there were a lot of
seasoned citizens. Jay?
Yeah, a lot of salt and pepper. A lot of salt and pepper.
Does that mean I'm just saying?
He's well seasoned. I just want to
be clear. Are you saying old people?
I'm saying people who have been around for a lot of seasons and have learned an awful lot in their lives. So what we're talking about with Vice President Pence, if you look at real resumes, he has the best resume of anyone on the stage. Congressman,
you think?
Congressman, governor, and vice president. No one else has those 3 titles and that experience. So he comes to the stage with the most experience. He did not hurt himself. The boos that were out there were from the VFake and the Trump people that were in the audience that hate him and will always hate him. Yeah. He held his own in terms of justifying his January 6th information. I think people were hearing it directly from him for the first time. So I think he actually helped himself a little, and I think you're seeing a little bit of a bump in the polls for him. But his path to victory is going to be very, very difficult based on the number of MAGA people that will never, ever vote for him and will fight hard against him.
Well, I think the big thing that people have to keep in mind while we're having these conversations too is that the Republican primary voters are not the same as the general election voters. So whereas the candidates have to really speak to the hardcore Republicans that are going to show up for the primaries, they have to also not alienate the independents and disaffected Democrats that they need to build an electoral college coalition.
The bottom line is, as being involved in Republican politics as long as I have, all that matters right now is winning the general election. We cannot afford to have 4 more years of this president or whoever they nominate and go for 8 years. The country cannot afford it. We've got a lot of stress going on in this country. People are paying more, 16.9% inflation since this president and administration took over. We can't afford it. We're seeing the mortgage rates being ridiculous. We need to stop this now. So we need to elect, as Republicans, the next president of the United States, and that's a November election. And going back to what you're saying, Nikki Haley addressed the abortion issue very, very strongly and very, very well. It's not the hard line pro-life message that a lot of Republicans have been demonstrating. So it'll be interesting to see how the Republican Party deals with her having a message out there that will appeal to a much broader audience than just hardcore Republicans.
Yeah.
Interesting. So here's the thing. The one issue, because you're right, it is all about the general election, but as we all know, because am I seasoned? I think I'm seasoned.
Yes.
Yes, I think I'm seasoned. I'm old, so
you're
and I'm an old
You're
white guy.
probably Tabasco seasoned.
Yeah, there's a little bit of jalapeno. There's a little bit of jalapeno in there for sure. So it's all about the general election, but we all know that people in the primaries vote with their heart, and the general election generally vote with their head. But there was no discussion of election integrity in general, which I think would have been a good discussion just to see not that anyone would have had a different position, because everyone would, of course, support the integrity of an election. But when you're talking about mail-in ballots and you're talking about ballot drops and ballot harvesting and different states who are manipulating the laws, I would have loved to have seen the candidates have a round at that. But here's my other question. As I said in the monologue, right, when you look at the post-debate poll, the last one out, I think, is an Emerson poll, and before that, a Reuters poll. So the Emerson poll in the GOP primary has Trump at 50, DeSantis at 12, if I'm remembering this, and Ramaswamy at 9. If you add those up, that's 71% of the vote. And to me, one of the divides that nobody's talking about is the sort of the divide between the old establishment, and let's take Trump out of the picture. Let's talk about policy and positions. Yeah. The Trump positions, or the populist, because the GOP to me has now really become a populist working class party, as opposed to what, let's say, the RINOs, to use a term, have really made it to be. Isn't that really the great divide in the Republican Party, Jay?
Yeah.
Well, all of us are RINOs. If you stray from the reservation, you stray from somebody else's opinion, every one of us becomes a RINO. There's a real opportunity. I believe there are probably 6 candidates left in this race that have an opportunity to win.
Like legitimate candidates.
Legitimate candidates. If you get rid of
Asa Hutchinson and Burgum
on the ends, and I'm saying, I don't believe that this is the time or the year or anything else for VFake. So that leaves legitimate candidates of 6. So moving forward, they all appeal to that centrist party, except for Trump. What
about DeSantis though? DeSantis' positions are Trumpian,
but they deliver differently. It's not a populist movement. It's a solid traditional Republican movement where you govern and you manage and you message differently, and it's not an constant attack on other Republicans. So you haven't seen him go after other Republicans. The only one that's going after other Republicans are Trump and Mini-Me, Ramaswamy. So what you're really seeing here is an opportunity to listen to what I believe are traditional mainline Republicans, and you'll call them RINOs. If you disagree with Trump on anything, you're a RINO. If you agree with anything that Bush has ever said, you're a RINO. I've been called anywhere from a right-wing wacko, a MAGA Republican, and a RINO all in the same day.
Yep.
So we have to understand who is it that is deciding these days who's a RINO and who's not. I think if you're looking at the other 5 candidates besides Trump, they're all solid, hardcore, traditional Republicans that believe in the platform of the Republican Party and will fight for it and have an opportunity to bring in those people that we used to call Reagan Democrats, who are now Republicans. They didn't go back to being Democrats after Reagan. They may have wandered here and there when there was a new flavor of the month, but they're still out there, and we just need to bring them back into the fold. And I think the candidates we have left will do that.
I think any candidate who continues support for the war in Ukraine is going to have a hard road ahead. I think that is a big dividing line right now in the Republican Party. And I know for me, as a person who leans more populist Republican, than maybe a traditional Republican. That is a big one for me. Like, if you are still saying that we need to be spending billions of dollars in Ukraine, you're going to have a hard road with that Republican primary. And V-Fake, as you're calling him, and DeSantis were the only two candidates who expressed a desire to end that conflict.
Well, I think everybody wants to end that conflict. The question is how they want to go about it. One of the things that's going to be very important, and one of the reasons that I say we have to narrow this field down, we can't have somebody on there just shouting slogans, that there's a real message out there and a real plan on both sides of that argument. Those that know that Ukraine is an example of someone that needs to fight back against the Putin and the aggressive policies of Russia and the relationship that Russia and China have together. But we can't have those kind of conversations when so much of it is top line slogan. And so I think there's a message on both sides of that argument. And I don't think we're hearing anything more than just headlines on that. So I think there's people that are going to be on both sides of that issue that if we give them an opportunity to explain their position and their reasoning behind it, we may have an ability to sway that middle to one side or the other. But we're not getting it done now by, just yelling out slogans.
Amen.
So we're getting the high sign from Lord Benjamin. We have to go to break. I do want to leave you with one thing, Jay the Republican. First of all, thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll come back because I like this throw up Thursdays with you. But the whole thing with RINOs, right? Republican in name only. It's not really an accurate acronym. I think RINO really stands for that there's a big part of the party that is really not interested in outsiders or really interested in no outsiders, right? RINO. Get that? Really interested in no outsiders. That's my new definition for RINO. What do you think?
I think you should push it because the definition of RINO now means nothing to me, and I don't think it reflects who we are as a party.
Well said. Thank you for joining us, folks. You are listening to Of the People with Robert Chernin and
Ericka Redic
and Jay the Republican. Look forward to having you back, Jay.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.